Hello, hello, hello.
Hi, Rabbi Katz, how are you?
Thank God, and you?
Baruch Hashem, all good.
Okay, everybody, with your permission, I'm going to get started right away due to the fact that, sadly, unfortunately, I need to leave early from the shir. I didn't want to cancel it due to the fact that it is the First of Esther and the day before Purim. So I wanted to make sure that we had a shir, but it's going to be somewhat shortened. I unfortunately have to be at a funeral at 2 o'clock, so I'm going to need to keep my comments short today. Just let people in, a few joining here.
It said you want us to unmute. Do you want us to mute now?
No, that's just the way that it presents. Don't, no. Let's go here. Okay. Right, so for those just joined, just an apology for the fact that we're going to cut it short. We're going to make it a shorter shir. Sadly, need to be at a funeral at 2 o'clock, and therefore we'll be leaving you a little bit, well, quite a lot earlier than usual today. But let's share, if we may, a couple of thoughts about Purim. As we know, today is the Fast of Esther. We know that we are meant to be fasting today. We fast until we hear the Megillah. Tonight and tomorrow we hear the Megillah, both evening and morning. It's not sufficient to only hear it once. We've got to hear it both evening and morning. We then need to make sure that we take care tomorrow of the various mitzvot that are that pertain to the Chag, and those are the mitzvah of Matanos Levyonim, giving charity gifts to poor people, Mishloach Manot, which is giving foodstuffs to ready-to-eat foods to a friend, at least one friend. And it says clearly that a woman should give to a woman and a man to a man. It should be done in that realm. And then to eat a Purim Suda. Sudat Purim should be eaten not tonight, but tomorrow, preferably after you've heard the Megillah. But if you're only hearing the Megillah later, it can be heard, it can be read, you can have the Suda even earlier. Let's also remember that tomorrow, of course, is Friday. And because it's a Friday, a lot of these things should be done earlier in the day, including the meal. It's preferable if your Purim Suda takes place earlier in the day rather than later in the afternoon, as we are accustomed to on a regular Purim. We also have a unique concept for this Purim, in that Purim itself, occurring on a Friday, means that in Jerusalem, where they usually had what they call Shushan Purim, which is usually the day after we celebrate Purim, the special allowance for the city of Jerusalem, as it would be for any walled city that was walled from the time of Joshua conquering Eretz Yisrael, that now for a part of the rulings falls away, and a part of it is carried over. Usually, we would read the Megillah on one day, and in Jerusalem, they would read the Megillah the next day. When it comes to a Friday and a Shabbos, no Megillah reading takes place on Shabbat. And therefore, in Jerusalem, believe it or not, they'll read the Megillah tonight and tomorrow, like with all of us. But some of the things, for instance, Mishloach Manot and Suda, they defer to Sunday. So they kind of keeping Purim over a 3-day period, if you wish. And in fact, it's written about by many that this is known as Purim Meshulash. This is called a threefold Purim. We are here going into a threefold Purim. It's not just a regular Purim. It's not just a regular Shabbos, but it's actually a Purim Meshulash. Meshulash meaning three, from the word shalosh, we're going into a threefold Purim. There's Purim tonight and tomorrow. There's the Shabbos in between, which is under the influence of Purim. As long as you're under the influence of the alcohol that you're supposed to drink on Purim, it will be under the influence of Purim. And then Sunday is type of a, let's call it a watered down Shushan Purim for the city of Yerushalayim. Now, I would like to, and then you've got today, of course, which is the fourth day that we're involved with. Day number 4 is today, is the Fast of Esther, which is the beginning of it all. Now, on this Saturday night, as with any other Saturday night, when you're going to make Havdalah, and we're going to delineate the differences that Hashem has given us in the world, we say there is a difference between Kodesh and Chol. We then say there's a difference between Yisrael and Amim. There is a difference between the Jewish people and the nations of the world. Now, it was at this very point that Haman and the whole story of Purim actually cast its ill daggers. It went for this fact that these people are different. Haman looked at the new society that was being built in Shushan, in Persia, I guess, as being this complete international kind of a place, that everybody would be the same, that we would all have and be governed by the same king, with the same rights and responsibilities, with the same functionality and civilization. This was the beginning of almost like a, he wasn't the only one. I guess the Greeks did it as well, and the Romans and the Babylonians. And then even if we think about it, the communists, to try and make everybody equal, everybody the same. That was a big target of Haman. One of the things that he wanted uniformity. Everybody must bow down to me, was the way that he brought it across. And we read about it, of course, in the Megillah. There was one man who saw it differently. His name was Mordechai. Now, this Mordechai, if you think about it, did he have to go and stick his nose into the face of Haman every day? Seems strange if you think about it. If he didn't want to bow down to him, he could have just taken a back seat. He could have gone and sat somewhere else. He could have got involved elsewhere. But it seems to be a little bit of a dafka play by Mordechai to really be in Haman's face, to tell him, as they say in the classics, Lo zu haderech. This is not going to be the way. This is not going to work. And why? Because we are different. And if you read in the Megillah, and you'll see it later on, he says, V'datehem shonot. Haman comes to Achashverosh and he says, it bothers me that these people have got a different religion. They're different. The big bothering thing is the differences. And this is what pained Haman. And this is what he wanted to try and stamp out. And this is what Mordechai and Esther had to go out of their way to say, you know what? Difference is good and it's fine. And the Jewish people need to be able to practice their differences. It doesn't mean that we can't be loyal to the king. It doesn't mean that, well, you see, you can't even be married to the king. It doesn't mean that we are not going to play our part in civilization and in civilized society. We're going to do all of those things. But we need to have our differences, and the differences are then played out by the next line that we say in Havdalah. We say, La Yehudim hayeta ora v'simcha v'sason v'yikar. And the Jewish people had ora, meaning light, simcha, meaning joy, sason, meaning great joy, and yikar, meaning dear, endearment. You know, if you would write a letter to somebody, you would say, my friend, Chaveri hayikar, my dear friend. So when you address a letter with yakar, it means dear, yakar. So we've got these 4 expressions that we say in the Havdalah. What's that got to do with difference? Well, do you know what the difference is? That sentence comes from the Megillah. Tonight, watch out for it. Towards the end of the Megillah, we say those words, that when the Jewish people found the salvation that they did, and they were spared Haman's decree, and we were allowed to celebrate in the way that Achashverosh allowed us to, with Purim and Shushan Purim, the extra day that was given for the place called Shushan, it says there in the Megillah, La Yehudim, the Jews had, Ora v'simcha v'sasan v'yikar. They had light, and they had joy, and they had great joy, and they had dearness or endearment. What are we talking about? Well, amazingly, the Gemara tells us, the Talmud points out, and it says as follows, Ora zu Torah. Ora is Torah. When we're using the word Ora for light, we mean the Torah. Simcha zu Yom Tov. Simcha means Yom Tov. Sason zu Brit Milah. Sason is the bris. And Yekar elu hatfilin. Yekar are the tefillin that guys put on in the morning. Think about now what it represented then and what it means that we have Ora v'simcha v'sasan v'yekar. So it goes on and elaborates. There were 4 major campaigns that Haman had, actually. If Haman was writing his manifesto against the Jewish people, there were 4 major areas that he felt that the Jewish people were really, that they needed to be brought into line. And they were. He said, you don't need, the Jewish people do not need another constitution. You can go by the constitution of the country. What, you got to have a Torah law that makes you different, and you're going to study this Torah? Come on, study the constitution of Persia, study the way of life of Persia. That should be, you don't need a different set of rule books. You can't have 2 sets of laws when it comes to performance within a country. You got to stick to the Persian laws. Your Torah laws, not for now. That's not for now, my dear Jewish people. He didn't call us dear, I suppose. And the second thing is, he didn't like Yom Tov. He said, why do the Jewish people need special public holidays? The public holidays that we celebrate in Persia are quite fine. We've got New Year's Day, and I don't know what they had, Katz Day and Achashverosh Day and the Nebuchadnezzar Day. We've got all of those things. Those are the days that you're going to have as your public holidays. Don't tell me you got other public holidays, and you can't take off work, and if you take off work, you're not going to get leave, and so on. All of these things are going to be written into Persian law. You're not having special holidays. And then he went on and he said, and there's something else. You Jewish people don't have to make yourselves look different. And one of the ways that you make yourselves look different and are different is with a bris milah. Don't make a bris. You have no right, and you should not circumcise your children. He started a campaign, which unfortunately goes on even today, which says stop circumcision, oust bris milah. You're not allowed to have a bris. And finally, he said, I don't like it. You know, in the olden days, the guys, I guess Mordechai even, would walk around wearing tefillin all the time, because tefillin, we're told, is a sign of our connection to God. And so a Jew is supposed to wear it all the time. The only reason we don't is because we're going into mundane, profane sort of places. And so it became customary many centuries ago that not everybody wears tefillin all the time. But in those days, they certainly did. A man wore tefillin all the time. I imagine Mordechai did. And so it was these outward things that really got Haman ticked off. Haman said, I don't want Torah, I don't want Yomim Tovim, I don't want Bris Milah, and I don't want Tefillin. They are areas that I don't want. And because of that, we're going to oust them, we're going to get rid of them. His major campaign was against these 4 areas of Jewish life. When the Jewish people were able to overthrow Haman and his ilk, and we were able to get back our spiritual sanity and our Judaism, what were the 4 main things that we got back? Ora, Simcha, Sason, V'Yikar. And there are 4 places There are many, many places where you can show and we demonstrate the difference between Jew and the nations of the world. But here, there are these 4 striking places where we have an absolute difference between ourselves and everybody else in these realms, in these areas. And let's quickly unpack them one by one. Torah. Our Torah is, and this was maybe the underestimation of Haman. Our Torah is not just another book of laws. Our Torah is not just a way of life. Our Torah is really light for ourselves and for the nations. That's what's called Ora, which is light. It is the light for everything. It is the way the whole world runs. The world could not exist according to Jewish thinking without the Torah being in existence. The world hinges around Torah and Torah's observance. This is not just observance of a law. This is not just you're not going to do it because you might get caught or you might go to jail or you're not being a good boy or a girl. No, that's not what this is about. This is about each part of Torah, each letter, each dash, each dot in Torah. Every single one of them is life. It's a life-giving force. And this is an underestimation. So we're not just showing a difference in that in the realm of the Torah itself, a different law, but it's actually the foundation of what the Torah is actually all about. And when it comes to Yom Tov, think about it. What and how, lahavdil, do the nations of the world commemorate, celebrate their special days? So I'm not being facetious, but it's usually a walk in the park, maybe a brine, maybe have a couple of beers, that sort of thing. With a Jewish celebration, even Purim, which is like the most kind of out there and party type of an atmosphere, although this year, of course, it's very curtailed, but there is a very, very spiritual essence to this whole thing. And that is the difference when it comes to our Yomim Tovim. Our Yomim Tovim aren't just days of commemoration where we're going to go to the park and have a braai or set off a couple of fireworks. No, that's not what it's about. Our celebrations are deep and profound and meaningful, and they bring an element of holiness into the world with each one of those Yomim Tovim bringing something different. And then when we talk about Bris Milah, there are many people who circumcise their kids. And circumcision predominantly is done in the non-Jewish world, they say, for health reasons. Even I remember when I used to visit the prison in Soweto, there was a big sign as you came off the highway coming in towards Soweto. There was a big sign that said, "Get yourself circumcised." I mean, you don't think you'll see that in a country on a billboard. There's massive billboard. Get yourself circumcised. Why? And they talk there about that it was useful in the to circumcise people for AIDS reasons and so on. So it was predominantly for a health reason. Jewish people don't give the circumcision for health reasons. Jewish people give the circumcision as a covenant between ourselves and God. Nowhere does it say that it's healthier. Maybe a side benefit, but nowhere does it say that. It is something that is done in order to bring about and in order to show and to have this absolute connection and covenant between ourselves and Shamayim. And then finally, when we think about Yakar, which is tefillin, nations of the world, anybody could have all sorts of signs that they could put upon themselves to show that they belong to a certain nation or a certain people, whether it's a red dot on the forehead, or it's a nose ring through the nose, or it's a white paint on your face, or it's wearing your hair in pigtails or ponytails, or shaving part of your head, or whatever it is. Many, many nations of the world have signs to show. So it wasn't the sign that bothered him. It was the deep, profound meaning. It was the connection that we showed to the Almighty and to each other. That was actually what Haman couldn't quite get his head around, and that he wanted to oust. And so we got these things back. And one of the things that we do with Havdalah is we connect Shabbos into this whole story. Shabbat is connected in because we say it at the end of Shabbat. On Shabbos, we have a strong, powerful spiritual connection. As we go out of Shabbos, we say, 1 second, maybe we need to now think about that we're going back to Ora v'simcha v'sason v'yikar. We're going from the brightness of Shabbos into the mundaneness of the week. And we've got to remember, we still have our Torah, we still have our Yomim Tovim, we still have bris milah, and we still have tefillin. It is a reminder of Purim, and it's a reminder of Shabbos, and all interwoven. The Rebbe pointed out, Lubavitcher Rebbe pointed out, that when you have a Purim Meshulash, where you have a threefold Purim like this, we should do something on Shabbos to remind us of Purim, and we should do something on Sunday to remind us of Purim. And the suggestion is to make this Shabbos a little bit more happy, joyous, simchadik, and Sunday as well. And he even said that on Sunday, and we always have, I guess you have, I suppose I do too, that we always remember somebody we should have given shalach manos to and we didn't, or somebody we should have given matanos le'evyonim to and we didn't, or we have leftover food that we should have eaten or whatever. Sunday, you can make yourself a little bit more of a seudat Purim, again, maybe not as fancy as you're going to do tomorrow, and you can give a little bit more shalach manos, even though the time has actually passed, and there's never a wrong time to give tzedakah to make sure that poor people are taken care of. So we're going into 3 power days. We're on the beginning one, the stepping stone into 3 power days. The power of Purim is the whole thing of turnaround. The nahapechu, that everything was changed, everything was turned around. Darkness became light, sadness became happiness, great joy, etc. All of these things were turned around. So that is the Purim day itself. Shabbos, we can carry it on, and Sunday we can just drive the whole thing home and make sure that it all happens in the most beautiful way. So I apologize for those who didn't hear the first introduction. I unfortunately have to be at a funeral at 2:00, so I'm going to end there. But I want to wish you all a very, very happy, happy Purim. Please God, this should be the Purim that turns everything around, that darkness becomes light, that sadness becomes joy, that illness becomes good and great and wonderful health for each and every one of us, each and every one of you, each and every one of Am Yisrael and the whole world. That please God, we should be blessed in the light of Purim to have great and wondrous and beautiful things happen for all of us. Amen. So take care and have a very, very happy Purim. And once again, apologies for cutting it short.
Thank you, Rabbi, and to you and to everybody at the Shir. Freiliche Purim and a good Shabbos. Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you.
Keep well.
Thank you. Take care.